The first is how do you think about getting the biggest bang of the buck? Now, what I find really interesting, whether it's on the MRC standard or not, is that when you use audio, it has a massive impact on your viewability and the actual effectiveness of that ad. In fact, what we found is when it falls under the MRC standard, there's 175% lift in recall with audio. So I think we're used to the visual and we understand that, but when when audio is there, it adds on to the performance. So this also goes into, we look at viewability, we think about making sure that it fits the MRC accreditation, which again, we're not contesting by any stretch of the imagination. But what it goes back to is us as advertisers or representing advertisers, whether we're on the buy or on the publisher side, there's still a huge bearing in terms of the caliber of the content of the ad itself, right? And so this is about the more compelling, once it's in view, the better value there is to the consumer whom we're trying to target. And as we know, in programmatic, we're doing that as precisely as we possibly can. Brand logo. And this is one of those things that I think is almost somewhat obvious, but it is a key study, which is that the placement of the logo at the top of the ad and making sure that it's immediately visible has a greater impact on that efficacy. Apologies. That's not just in terms of open ad formats, but it's also for large format ads as well. I think sometimes our advertisers assume that consumers know who they are just from using standard taglines, like one of our advertisers nationwide is on your side. Once you hear that humming from Peyton Manning, you know who the ad is going to be all about. But we can't always assume that consumers are going to have that recall, which is why a prominent brand logo is so important. Thirdly, avoid the clutter. Now, I've been in programmatic for quite some time. We talked a lot about header bidding prior to my coming up onto the stage. And it's been always an industry best practice when it comes to programmatic that the less clutter, the more attention that you're going to get. Now, what the study proves out, and I'm sure anybody who's representing a publisher in this room is going to scream at me, is basically saying if there's fewer ad spaces on the page, the more viewable and the more effective the ad is going to be. Now, I don't think any of us would still have day jobs if there was only one ad on a page, because that's just not going to help with the monetization strategy. That being said, I think it is worthwhile when we think about programmatic has always been about, or it started about remnant or open exchange inventory. There's lots of benefits now in terms of being able to enable content and to enable premium aspects and guaranteed aspects of programmatic to come into that space. When we're talking about premium and when we're talking about good quality inventory, there's inherently less clutter on that page. And so we should still be looking for those pages that have dedicated ad units that are compelling and captivating to the user. And number 4, before I move on to questions from the audience, is you want to make sure that the ads that are placed in places that are likely to be viewed for a longer time, regardless of the percentage in view. So again, that finding that tells us that the time in view is more important than the percentage in view. And one of the things that we tested on this, and we didn't find the significance that you would anticipate. Now, some of this might have been the demographic that we reached out to for the study, or it may have been other factors that we weren't accounting for. But you would intrinsically assume that when an ad appears in a contextually relevant environment, that's going to have an impact both on viewability as well as performance, but we didn't find a strong direct correlation. So it's interesting just to make sure, and a point that whilst programmatic also enables the delivery of contextually relevant environments, that relationship between context in the ad and the content in the page doesn't have a huge bearing on viewability effectiveness.